I'd like to call this meeting of the Carroll County Board of Supervisors meeting to order. I'll ask Robbie to do the invocation and the pledge, please.
It's all rise. Heavenly Father, we thank you for this opportunity to be able to gather in this house. And Lord, we ask that you watch over this meeting and lead us, guide us, and direct us. We ask that you keep everyone safe on their travels back home. Lord, we ask you just to be with each and every person here, and just as we have needs, ask that you meet them, Lord. We ask you that you help us to govern these proceedings as deemed necessary for the betterment of the county. In Jesus' name we pray. Amen.
Amen.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Has everyone got to look at the invoices? If so, I'd like a motion to approve the payment of the invoices.
I make a motion that we approve the payment of invoices as presented.
Have a motion. Do I have a second?
I'll second it.
Motion and a second. Any discussion? Call for a vote. Start with you.
Yes.
On the end. This is your first vote, is it not?
Yes.
Dr. Littrell?
Yes.
Robbie?
Yes.
Yes.
Philip? And I say yes. All right, do I have a motion to approve the minutes of the previous meeting?
I make a motion to approve the minutes of the previous meeting.
Have a motion. Do I have a second?
Second.
Motion and a second. Any discussion? Start with you again on the end.
Yes.
Dr. Littrell?
Yes.
Robbie?
Yes.
Philip?
Yes.
I say yes. All right, I open a public hearing at 7:02 for the plat vacation. Here he is. All right. Who's the first person that's going to speak on the plat?
Mike Wilson, 169 Rainbow Drive.
Mr. Wilson? Not speaking, okay. Next one.
Mr. Caudell?
Good evening.
Good evening.
Thank you for entertaining our petition. My name's Alan Carroll. I'm the attorney for the Hanks family that's the owner of the property involved in this vacation. If I may, I have a short handout. Thank you. What I've handed you is a copy of the recorded plat that we're asking to vacate a portion of. The property has been recently surveyed in connection with its being offered for sale by Tom Slusher, the surveyor. He is here. He has copies of the plat if you want to examine it more closely. If you have seen our petition, we have asked that the portion lying within the property of Jeffrey Frank Hanks, Janet Hanks Callis, and Francis Hanks Petty be vacated. That would include the northernmost street on this plat. Parts of this plat have been developed. All of the, what I would call the southernmost block has been developed, and Mr. Slusher has mentioned on the plat the lots in the upper block that have been sold. A lot and a portion has been sold to Thomas Bradley Cole and his wife Martha. A portion of 25, or all of 25 and 26 belong to Jane Mickelfelder, and 27 and 28 belong to Michael and Sandy Wilson. Those lots have been sold. The remainder of those lots belong to the Hanks family, and we're asking that those be vacated. This will just become part of the larger tract that lays behind it. They own a large acreage tract. none of the streets have been built with the exception of the driveway of Michael Felder and Wilson that lays between their two lots. It is a distinction, so far as I know, there's no opposition to what we've asked for in our petition. So unless there's opposition, we would ask you at the conclusion of the public hearing to move to grant the petition. I prepared an ordinance for your consideration in accordance with the petition I have filed. The only point that I'm aware of that maybe we should discuss just a little is that when the property was transferred from a larger group of heirs to my three owners, Mr. Messersmith, who did this 1973 plat, did the plat transferring the property to us, and he did not include in the transfer to us the driveway between Michael Felder and Wilson. So when I'm asking you to vacate things, I'm not asking you to vacate the strip between Michael Felder and Wilson. They use that for access to their properties. The Planning Commission, over and above what we asked for, recommended that that strip be vacated. We are not asking it be vacated. They use that strip for access to their house, each one. I think their misapprehension was that if it was vacated, it would go back to those two owners. That's not my opinion, because this is not like a Commonwealth highway and it's where it's owned by the county, and when it's vacated by the county, it goes back to the adjoining landowners. This is still owned by the underlying property owner, and if it's vacated, it'll just simply stop the use of the street as to public use and possibly revert to the people that used to own it, not to Michael Felder and Wilson. And I think that is not what would serve anybody's best interest. They still need to use that strip to get in and out to their house. They don't particularly care to own it because they just pay taxes on it. As it is, they're not paying taxes on it and they get full use of it, which is a pretty good deal. So if you grant our petition, you'll be abandoning those things within our property, but not affecting Ms. Michael Felder and Mr. and Ms. Wilson. Thank you.
Thank you. Is anyone else to speak?
Mr. Jeff Hanks?
Mr. Carroll represented as well. I'm fine, thanks.
Laura Terry?
My topic is not on the topic at hand, but a different subject, and I would like a time at the end after you've covered your topics to speak.
Thank you.
Legislation. I don't wish to address it.
Mr. Durbin, you wish to speak to this matter?
I would, Mr. Chairman. If you want to conclude the public hearing portion, then I'll have a few comments.
All right. Any board members have anything to say? All right, I'll close the public hearing at 7:08 p.m.
So the public hearing that was just conducted was pursuant to 15.2-1800, just because the locality potentially has an interest in real property that's being given up. So we've checked that box, and now you all can move forward. Mr. Caudell did prepare an ordinance to be adopted, but we determined that really wasn't necessary because I think everyone's in agreement. We've got a plat that's signed off by all the adjoining property owners. So if it's the board's pleasure, I think you can simply adopt the resolution that I prepared that approves the vacation of the rights-of-way and authorizes the chair or the county administrator to execute the plat and any additional documents that may be deemed necessary to consummate the vacation. And if you'd like, Mr. Chairman, I can read the proposed resolution.
Yes, if you please.
This is a resolution of the Board of Supervisors of Carroll County, Virginia, approving the vacation of certain public rights-of-way located in the Hanks subdivision. Whereas a petition has been presented to the Board of Supervisors of the County of Carroll, signed on behalf of all owners of lots located within a certain subdivision located within the County of Carroll, commonly referred to as the Hanks subdivision, as shown on a plat recorded in Plat Cabinet 1, Slide 129, page 35. And whereas the board has conducted a public hearing in order to satisfy any requirements of Virginia Code Section 15.2-1800, And whereas the board finds that all property owners are in agreement with the proposed vacation of public interests, as shown on a plat presented to the board, and whereas the board finds that none of the public rights-of-way depicted on the Hanks subdivision have been utilized for public passage, and that it is otherwise proper and in the public interest to approve the requested vacation of public rights-of-way as shown on the said plat, and that such vacation complies with the requirements of Virginia Code Section 15.2, 2271, Sub 1. Now, therefore, be it resolved by the Board of Supervisors of Carroll County, Virginia, number 1, that the requested vacation of public rights-of-way is hereby approved. Number 2, the county administrator and the chairman of the board, either of whom is authorized to act, are hereby authorized and directed to execute the plat presented to the board and any additional instruments as may be determined to be necessary to effectuate the vacation. Number 3, this resolution shall take effect immediately. And the only correction I would add is that in the certification, I had a stray reference to a March 2019 resolution. That just needs to be updated by hand if the board is so inclined to pass this.
Do we need to make note of the request to not vacate that strip of property in between the Michael Felters and the Wilsons, or?
I think the plat before you has footnotes saying it is vacated because the planning commission required that.
Okay. I believe all parties have signed off on that plat,
Okay.
so that is an option before you.
Okay. Well, I make a motion that we adopt this resolution.
I have a motion. Do I have a second?
Second.
Motion and a second. Any discussion? Hearing none, I'll ask for the vote. Start with you, Philip.
Understanding that they all agree to it, I vote yes.
Robbie?
Yes.
Dr. Littrell?
Yes.
Tracy?
Yes.
I say yes. All right, I'll open the public hearing at 7:12 for the public hearing on water and sewer amendments. And what? Nobody signed up for that, evidently. Does anybody wish to speak to the amendment of the water and sewer? No one here to speak. I'll close the public hearing at 7:12. All right, do I have a motion on the water and sewer amendments?
Mr. Chairman, if I can.
Yes. Yeah. Yeah.
When we had discussed this matter back in June of 2019, the board had directed to have some alternatives to consider. The first alternative would be just to temporarily delay the previous action taken by the board in November of 2018 to repeal the non-user mandatory connection provisions of the Carroll County Code. That's one alternative that is before you today. The other alternative would be to adopt an ordinance that does provide for a mandatory connection and non-user fees, but puts limits on the amount of fees that can be charged. It would limit it to either 45% of what is charged to the base user charge, or the ratio that debt service represents to the overall budget of the PSA, whichever is less. So if you were ever in a position where debt service was more than 45% of the budget, you would still be capped at 45%. And if as debt is retired over time, the debt service falls below 45%, the PSA would not have discretion to charge a higher level than the actual ratio of debt service to overall operating costs. So rather than postpone the matter further, you have the option to just adopt that with some limitations that would guide and limit the PSA's ability to impose non-user mandatory connection. And of course, if you have any questions, I'm happy to discuss.
Anyone have any questions?
Could you succinctly explain the difference between, assuming this is the same page that we're working off of, right?
I believe so.
On page 2. Uh, 190-13, excuse me, 190-12, and then on the third page, the 235-blank.
One is for sewage, and the other is the water chapter. In the current version of the county code, you do have exclusive service area provisions in both water and sewer and in sewage, but the mandatory connection as to water and sewer, those provisions are, I believe they're both contained in the sewer section. So that would just be to clarify that you've got your mandatory connection / non-user authority for water under the water chapter and for sewer under the sewer chapter. Just kind of cleans up what was maybe not the best drafting in an earlier version of the code. Thank you.
Do I have a motion, reference to the resolution? Unless y'all want to digest it a few more minutes. What I can ascertain from this is you're putting something into place to prevent exorbitant rate structure because it can't be over a certain amount of the debt, correct?
That was the idea,
Yeah.
to impose some limitations
On
on
the
how
county.
high that non-user charge can actually be. And it has to be in a ratio to what the
Debt.
base rate is.
Yep. Okay.
I'll move that we adopt the resolution as presented.
All right, I have a motion to adopt the resolution as presented.
If we could clarify to adopt the ordinance as presented, recodifying the two chapters.
Okay. I'll move that we adopt the ordinance as presented.
I have a motion, do I have a second?
I'll second.
Motion on the second, and the second. Any discussion? Call for the vote. Tracy?
Yes.
Dr. Littrell?
Yes.
Robbie?
Yes.
Philip?
Yes.
I say yes. In the future, anything with the PSA, rates, structure should be addressed to the PSA. The county doesn't set those. All right, under new business, consent calendar. Do I have a motion to approve the consent calendar?
Mr. Chairman, I make a motion that we amend the agenda to add citizens' time.
I have a motion to change the consent agenda to add citizens' time. Is there a second? That would be before old business.
Second.
Motion and a second. Start with you, Philip.
Yes.
Tracy?
Yes.
Dr. Littrell?
Yes.
Robbie?
Yes.
I say yes. Typically, we only have citizens' time once a month. This is the more of a public hearing and conducting of normal business and paying bills and that sort of thing, because supervisors don't have speaking time at this time either. So typically, that's how it's done, but we've had a motion to amend that to allow citizens' time for this meeting. All right, rural rustic resolutions. Oh, I need a vote on that. Do I have a motion to approve the consent calendar as amended?
I make a motion, we approve the consent calendar as amended.
Do I have a second?
I'll second it.
Motion and a second. Any discussion? Start with you, Philip.
Yes.
Tracy?
Yes.
Dr. Littrell?
Yes.
Robbie?
Yes.
And I say yes. Now we go to rural rustic resolutions. Can we do this all at one, or should we do them individually?
I think each one have to be on their own.
Okay?
There's all separate resolutions.
All right, I will entertain a motion on the Water Plant Road, Route 962.
I make a motion that we approve the resolution for Water Plant Road.
Have a motion. Do I have a second?
I second it.
Motion and a second. Any discussion? I might just describe what's occurring here. Rural rustic is a VDOT type thing where normally roads that not paid for by any other method, normally dead-end roads that has a method, they don't upgrade them, they just pave them essentially. And there's specific regulations pertaining to them, and the speed limit is 35 miles per hour on those areas. So typically, that's what this is for. And we will be having a hearing in the next several months to add new roads to that, if anyone is interested. All right, I have a motion and a second. Any more discussion? Call for the vote. Tracy?
Yes.
Dr. Littrell?
Yes.
Robbie?
Yes.
Philip?
Yes.
I say yes. Do I have a motion on the Collier School Road, rural rustic resolution?
I make a motion that we approve Collier School Road for Rural Rustic.
I have a motion. Do I have a second?
I'll second it.
Motion and a second. Any discussion? Start with you, Philip.
Yes.
Tracy?
Yes.
Dr. Littrell?
Yes.
Robbie?
Yes.
And I say yes. Do I have a motion on Fieldview Road, Route 822? I'll make a motion that we approve Fieldview Road. Do I have a second?
I'll second it.
Motion and a second. Any discussion? Start with you, Tracy.
Yes.
Dr. Littrell?
Yes.
Robbie?
Yes.
Yes.
Philip? And I say yes. Beauty Shop Road, that's where I need to go. Get my hair fixed.
I'll make a motion on Beauty Shop Road that we put it on the resolution there.
All right, I have a motion to put Beauty Shop Road on the rural rustic. Do I have a second?
Second.
Motion and a second. Start with, any discussion? Start with you, Philip.
Yes.
Tracy?
Yes.
Dr. Littrell?
Yes.
Robbie?
Yes.
I say yes. All right, do I have a motion on Merrimack Road to be included in the rural rustic resolution?
I make a motion Merrimack Road be on the rural rustic.
I have a motion. Do I have a second?
Second.
Motion and a second. Start with you, Tracy.
Yes.
Dr. Littrell?
Yes.
Robbie?
Yes.
Philip?
Yes.
And I say yes. Now we're down to Route 792, Apple Ridge Road. Do I have a motion to include that in the rural rustic?
I'll make a motion to approve that in the rural rustic.
Motion. Do I have a second?
Second.
Motion and a second. Any discussion? Start with you, Philip.
Yes.
Tracy?
Yes.
Dr. Littrell?
Yes.
Robbie?
Yes.
And I say yes. All right, now we'll cover the RFP for auditing services. Mr. Dalton, would you like to speak to that?
Mr. Chairman and members of the board, our current auditing contract it has expired with the past audit. We need to advertise before you as a draft request for proposals for auditing service. that will be advertised and sent out to auditors that are licensed in Virginia to do the business. What the proposal allows is for a 5-year term with some renewals. I would also suggest when we do the interviews that the treasurer, 2 members of the board, and the county administrator be part of that interview team and review the proposals.
Anybody have a motion?
I make a motion, we advertise for the auditing services.
To include Mr. Dalton's recommendation.
To include Mr. Dalton's recommendation.
All right, have a motion. Do I have a second?
Second.
Motion and a second. Any discussion? I think that's a great idea. In the past, I don't think the treasurer or the board of supervisors have been privy to those RFPs. So that we'll leave that up to the chairman to make those appointments or ask for volunteers. All right, now, I guess I have to take the vote. I didn't vote, did I? All right, we got a motion and a second. And start with you, Tracy.
Yes.
Dr. Littrell,
Yes.
Robbie,
Yes.
Philip,
Yes.
and I say yes. All right, now we're down to twice per year tax collection.
Mr. Chairman, if, Mr. Vice Chairman, before we ask Ms. Williams to come up, talk about this. The Finance Committee has spent with the school board and others, went through our current collections and how things and our bills and revenue projections for the future. Some of the things that we've talked about, some of our invoices or bills and debt service payments come due at the wrong time of the year to cash flow the county without doing items such as withholding payment of invoices or going out and getting a revenue anticipation rate. One of the things that came out of our discussions was several things. So we talked about stickers, we talked about twice a year tax collections. Twice a year tax collections is one of those items that on your real estate, you would bill twice a year. You would get part of that income in the first part of the year, which allows that July, August, September, October arena to have enough money to pay your bills and these debt service payments without having to withhold payments, without having to go for revenue anticipation. That's a short-term fix for some of our financial problems that we'll be discussing as we develop our budget for next year. But Ms. Williams, I invite her here tonight to be sure that she would be okay on that item. Anita, if you'd come on up to the podium.
I'm going to stay back here.
Anita has modified her position a little bit as we went through the discussions of this, and has been more than gracious as we talked through these things, of at least considering this change. Actually puts a big burden of work twice a year, which now is just once a year. Thank you for me.
I really don't have any handouts or anything for this. There are some issues. This doesn't only affect myself, but it affects the commissioner, because she would have to get the information out earlier to myself to get the tax tickets out, hopefully within 30 days. It makes it a pretty rough move there if we get it April to get them out by the 1st of May. If you have a June 5th, deadline. You can change those dates. That's up to you as a board to change the due dates, whether you want it June or July or whatever works to make the finances look better. I don't know about setting the levy. Does the levy have to be set?
My understanding that the board, as part of this, will have to estimate a levy that could be changed later with a public hearing. They'll have to have a public hearing, set a levy, preliminary levy, and
Then go from there.
finalize their budget. Then you have to have a second public hearing to make it happen. I would defer to the county attorney for all those legal questions.
Right.
How to go about it. Because I'm not sure there doesn't have to require a public hearing and an ordinance to make this happen.
It would require a public hearing and an ordinance to establish twice a year collection. Once if you go that route and you're in the process of twice yearly, and you set a preliminary levy and then you adjust it after that levy, then the second levy would be where you make that adjustment. You come out to the correct
And,
annual collection.
yeah, and come up here, Fran. Yeah, come on. Because, yeah, there's some ordinances, do they have to be changed, like?
Due dates on real estate exemptions, veterans exemptions.
Tax relief for the elderly?
Yes.
Do all those have to be changed?
They'll
I'd have to
probably,
look at them one by one.
there would probably have to be some adjustments on land use unless we pick up supplements and do abatements.
One thing that would happen with twice a year, right now when an attorney sells a piece of property, handles the sale of a piece of property, they prorate and pay a prepayment for, say, the length of time somebody owned it, say January, February, March. So what would happen with the twice a year, then that would not be an option. They would either have to pay the first half in full and second half in full. So that would take that, out of there.
And we're just talking about doing real estate, nothing else.
Right, just real estate.
If you do not have the levy set, we would have to produce 2 sets of books, correct? Does the levy not have to be set for it to be complete?
I think you're right.
Yeah, there's a lot of different things to look
So
at.
the levy would have to be set prior to, depending on when you set the due date, probably no later than April 1st, in order for me to get the books to Bonita.
What this would do, you have a possible gain of $7.4 million in the first half billing. And then the 7.4 in the second half, that's about right. I think I hit on the codes. We have 31,925 real estate tickets. So your postage, will increase some. In the first year, I think the mailing should go out twice. A lot of localities send one ticket with a Part A and a Part B for a pull-off, but I think in your first year, you would want to let the public know so that they can kind of prepare and send them 2 different tickets.
Is there several localities that do this?
There are. There are. I can get you stats on that if you want.
I'm just curious.
Stats on the cost or anything like that.
Is it about half that do that, or somewhere in that?
What's that?
About half the counties do that?
Oh, yeah. Well, and a lot of them, most of them have changed their dates to work with their financial positions and what they have at certain times of the year of what might be due. So you can do June 5th and December 5th, or you all can set your dates however you see fit. Totally your decision.
What this does for you, currently, June the 30th of every year, if you look at your audit, you'll have around 7 million to 8 million in the bank. And based off your budget, when we get to September, October, you have less than $1 million currently. And that's withholding about a couple $1 million worth of bills not paying that. So with twice a year, the 7 million gets you 14, so you will have plenty of money to make it through those times until the December collection. And Ms. Williams is correct. It's your discretion to set those dates. I would, the first year, be my guess, because if you decide to have the public hearing and talk about this, is to give a little bit of extra time instead of June the 15th, make it July the 15th.
Right.
So that we can work our way through this process. So, my recommendation to the board would at least prepare an ordinance and have a public hearing and set a public hearing date for last meeting in February, hopefully, and move forward. And if it doesn't work out, the public hearing, nobody wants it, then you don't have to adopt.
If the board's inclined to do that, at that time I can have a memo ready that outlines all the adjustments that we would need to make if we wish to.
I have a situation in another area that does the twice-a-year billing, and they send out one mailing with 2 coupons and 2 envelopes, so you can either pay half or the whole thing. And they do it on February the 5th and August the 5th, which really is pretty convenient to get you away from Christmas, and it would pretty well hit the area that you're talking about, so that may be a spread you might want to consider. If you do
Sure.
it. And so they only have the one mailing and one postage bill.
Yeah,
for that.
that's what I was talking about. You, excuse me, can have a pull-off for your first payment and then a pull-off for your second. But for the first year where the public is not aware, I would suggest, and this is up to y'all, suggest doing 2 mailings just to make them aware, if possible. Any other questions concerning twice a year? Oh, and decals, I don't even want to go there. But that's at your all's discretion also.
Thank
That
you.
that would fall, you know, if you put decals in twice a year, put decals back in twice a year, our collection period is now like January through June for the delinquents, and of course, we collect them all year long. But then you're putting decals in there also, so.
Speaking of decals, are we doing the DMV stop now?
We are. We have a full file going. I sent you all an email last week that gave you all the time period on those.
Will that pick up some of the ones that are delinquent, even more than just this past year, but years past, if they try to get their license tags renewed?
Yeah, not just within the past 2 years, but prior to.
Thank you.
Thank you, Benita.
Uh-huh.
Something else to
Good to see you.
consider also
Thank
is
you.
you might want to discuss with the town of Hillsville to see if you can get them on board, so that I don't have to produce 3 books.
Yeah, I think we got a representative here tonight. I was gonna mention that last time we had a public hearing, they had their folks here, so. You know. Part of the reason we have such an issue, especially towards July, is our school debt payments are due. right at the end of the school year. Is that correct, Benita?
That is. We have one in May and one in July, rather large. Total comes to 3 million.
Over, close to 4 million.
Well, yeah. Close to 4, yeah.
Any discussion?
Or we're going to have a public hearing on it, right?
Yep, that's what we would be doing if y'all so desire.
I'll make a motion that we have staff and establish a public hearing and get all the pertinent information together on it. And I think you said the second meeting in February, Saleo, which would be the 24th.
Is that a motion?
That's a motion.
All right, I have a motion. We have a public hearing on the twice-a-year billing for real estate taxes on February 24th. Do I have a second?
I'll second.
Motion and a second. Any discussion? Start with you, Philip.
Yes.
Tracy?
Yes.
Dr. Little?
Yes.
Robbie?
Yes.
I say yes. All right, that brings us down to hearing from the folks. Dr. Little, if you'd take the time, you'll be allowed to have, we don't have a sign-up sheet.
Yes, she does. She's got a second.
Oh, did you get a sign-up sheet on it? All right, we have 2 folks sign up to speak. Ms. Turley?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman and Board, for amending your agenda tonight to allow us to speak since we came over to see you. Your meeting so far has been enlightening to us, so I'm glad we made the trip, even if we didn't get to speak. Mainly, I'm here not to ask questions of you tonight, but for clarity for myself. Being a small community, the town of Hillsville, county of Carroll, information gets out to us as citizens, and there's just a little bit of rumbling going on about the Carroll County Recreation Department. And being a mother, grandmother, and a citizen who uses the Recreation Department, this is of concern to me. So I'm here to stand before you tonight just to ask you, first of all, before you make any grave decisions on that department, to think twice about anything. But if you could, just clarify with us as citizens, maybe what is going on in your mind as to what's going to happen with that department. In our region, recreation means a lot to all of us. I know most every one of you sitting here, and you either have children or grandchildren, or you yourself use that department, and it's good for us mentally and it's good for us physically. And I want us to be able to continue to use that department. My family has used it for years. You know, my sister was very active in that department. She's retired now, but she worked hard. Larry Collins did, previous board of supervisors members. We've grown it to where it is now, and I'd hate to see us go backward. So I stand before you here tonight just letting you know that as a citizen, and I think there's some folks behind me too, who just have some concerns about what might be potentially happening. And I want you to know that we want to hear from you. We want to know not backroom deals, we want to know front room deals of what you might have on your mind. And I thank you for your time.
Thank you. Ms. Manning?
Good evening. I wasn't sure whether or not I was going to speak tonight or not, but I have been contacted by numerous people throughout the county asking me to do what I could to keep our Parks and Rec department. As she did say, you know, I did work very hard to get the Parks and Recreation department back to looking like a park. When I went there, it was pretty drastic. Since going to the park, we added one sport activity, soccer. They did not have soccer when I went to the park. We added the 1 mile walking trail. We added the 9-hole disc golf course. We added the adult exercise equipment on the trail. We added new playground equipment to the playground. We added grills, we added picnic tables, we added adult swings, and if you've been to the park is used. And it upsets me that the park offices have been moved. I've talked to board members. Some of them were not even aware that the park offices have been moved. When you move the park offices from the park, that is going to create vandalism at the park. It's going to create things going on that the sheriff's office is going to have to patrol. Even when we were there, we were on site. We had problems with some drug exchanges going on, some prostitution going on. And I don't want to see the park get turned into, an area that's not upkept. The playground is currently open. That is a liability to you. If the mulch is not raked back up after a rainstorm, you're responsible for those fall areas on the swings and the slides. We did that on a weekly basis, and if you've got nobody on grounds to take care of that, then you better do something about it because you're responsible. You've got people going down there on pretty days. They're still eating lunch there. They're still picnicking there. They're still walking the trail there. You've got trash that's got to be dumped there. In the wintertime, we did it every 2 to 3 days because that place is used. The office, we just put down new flooring in. You just paid out of our budget to put down new flooring in the office. And then I understand we're in a budget crunch, but you go over to Woodlawn and you do remodeling, which, my understanding, we don't have money to do anything new. We're cutting budgets. So, I would like to know what the expense was to the county to go in and make those renovations at the Woodlawn School to move the offices off-site from the park. During my tenure as Recreation Director, I did have supervision at the Woodlawn School facility from the time it was open till the time it was closed. And I've been told that that's the reason they moved the offices was for supervision. And I did have an employee there on site during the exercise walking hours during the day. And then Garrett Nelson, who you all were losing, who was an outstanding employee, and that's a loss to this county, I will say. But even at night, my people was there. There was supervision there. And so, that sort of upsets me that you're saying that that's a reason that the offices was moved, because I can tell you the supervision was there, and we never had no complaints about that. I don't know what's going on in your mind, but it is rumors. It's rumbling. And like I said, my phone's been ringing off the hook and messages coming to me left and right because they know I'm a very vocal person and I have passion for that park, obviously, or I wouldn't have done the things I did. And I just hate to see us let it go backwards and the park go downhill. There's things to do at that park all day long. Whether it be winter, spring, fall, summer, it doesn't matter. And, I just don't think that you move the Recreation Department offices to Woodlawn and then you decide to move them back in the spring and summer months. People's going to get confused where they need to go. I know you all are in the middle of Woodlawn coming into apartments. I don't think the offices need to be in the middle of an apartment complex. And it's my understanding the gym's going to have to be shut down anyway for those renovations at Woodlawn. So why do you move the offices from the current office when you're going to have to shut them down over there? So there's just a lot of things going on I don't think the public is aware of. I talked to a couple board members, like I said. I don't think you all were even aware that the offices had been moved. And, I know we lost our county pool, and there's citizens that didn't even know that was going on. And I just don't want to see us sit back and lose our park like we did our pool. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Question, if I may.
Yes.
How many people use the park? How many people use it?
Oh, you need to go to a big basketball game, football game, baseball game, during the summer. The trail is full, the 9-hole disc golf course, is used on a daily basis. The playground, we have field trips from Grayson County, Allegheny County, Wythe County, even our local schools here, that's their field trips to Playground 2000. Playground 2000 also was built on donations from the people in this county. I served on that committee. The Board of Supervisors has $10,000 in that playground. That was their donation to Playground 2000. The rest of it, Larry Collins and I served on that committee, and it was donations by the county. If you will go to that park, there is a fence on the upper side of the playground. And people in this county bought signs, and my nieces and nephews' names are on those signs, and that's how we raised our money for the playground. But the park is used tremendously on a daily basis.
I'm not familiar with this park, but I know they got one in Mount Airy, and it seems to be the same group it has at the other parts of the county, the city left out. You know, I'm not familiar with the park out here as to how it's used, if it's available to all parts of the county, or
It's available to anyone, anybody that wants to use it.
question I had.
Sure.
Well, I'm missing basketball practice tonight and a game tonight, so I'm very aware. I see most of the folks here at some of the games. My grandkids involved in almost every one of the sports. But we are in the midst of a budget crunch. You know, I have a place on the creek. I don't run electricity all during the winter time. I drain the pump and winterize the place. You know, we have lost a lot of positions. We've had at least 1, 2, 3, 4 main. You start with the assistant county administrator, PSA director, finance, all those positions not been filled. I mean, that's a predicament we're in. You know, it's not easy doing this. And as time goes on, we're going to try to improve our finances to get us better capable of handling these situations. Anybody else have anything to say?
Well, I think the biggest misconception is that we're trying to close it and sell it, and that's not something that we're not trying to do. We're just trying to make things more efficient, more affordable for us, and the recreation department is a great thing. I coached, my son played ball over there. I helped with that for years and thoroughly enjoyed it. And I think it's a great thing. I think there's a lot of good things over there. But it's not something that I think that's just been a huge misconception that we're trying to close the department, and that's not something we're trying to do. That's about all I have to say.
Then I think it might be a good idea that you just make a statement that you're not planning on selling it or closing it down or anything like I say, I've been gone for 10 years. I retired 10 years ago. So. And I was there for 20 years, and I'm going to promise you one thing. The last 10 years I was there, I was moving every 30 days. But it hasn't gone anywhere yet. So I don't think anybody's lined up to bid on it or anything like that to buy it, but I think it's a great asset. And thank you, Mr. Cross, question there. When we opened up over in '82, starting with the pool and all that, that place stayed covered up all the time, whether it's playground or whatever. For everybody. There was times that you'd go back at 9 o'clock at night and try to close the gates, and you'd have to ask people to move, especially in the summertime, because they were there. So it's important to the county. It's, yeah, I would like to have seen it move somewhere where we'd had better location and had more facilities, but there's been a lot of sweat and tears put into that place, and so I think we just need to make sure the public knows what's going on, and it takes money. but Libby mentioned a while ago, we had a pool one time. When I retired, they never did open it back up. And I listened to a few board members. I think some of those board members were still on the board. A couple of years later, they were talking about they want to go to Woodlawn and put a pool like we got over Dublin. And that pool probably run $400,000 or $500,000 a year to operate, 20, 30 people a day to manage. And I kept hearing we were spending $100,000 a year in our pool going in the hole. Well, Libby knows as well as I know, I don't remember a budget ever being over $45,000, $50,000. So I don't know how we lost $100,000. And we couldn't get 7 people to be lifeguards and work all summer. So, you know, it's just a misconception. So we don't need to lose anything else we have. So I just, if there's this communication out there, or this information going on, let's just make it clear that you're not got it up for sale. And from what I understand, the county's monies that they're in debt with, I don't think you can sell it for that much.
We'd have to sell the whole, we'd have to sell the whole county. We have no plans to sell anything. Libby is correct that the Woodlawn School will be worked on when I guess as we get closer to the springtime. But basketball is going on at Woodlawn Gym. So that's why we moved the folks over there. We don't have baseball. We do have the other facilities there, but that was the reason we moved them over there, because we winterized one. There's no reason to keep both of them open. We have to keep the gym open, so we winterized one. And that's to me, that's just good use of your resources. You know, it will be open back up, you know, because we will, when they start working on the Woodlawn Gym, that will be closed. We won't be able to utilize that gym. Anybody else have anything?
Mr. Chairman?
Yes.
Different subject, if I could be recognized.
Yes, go ahead.
And I appreciate the fact that your meetings are recorded, so that's the only reason for coming up here. Speaking on behalf of Town of Hillsville regarding taxation twice a year, we welcome the opportunity to work with the county. It sounds like your timetable for making that decision is pretty aggressive if we're looking at the end of February. I would ask you, keep it in mind that all town citizens are county citizens. For you as the board to grant permission, if you would, for Mr. Dalton to share with our town office any information that your attorney's office gleans. Some of the issues that you have as a county, we have as a county, we may also have as a town, and that would help us maybe get ahead of the game and meet your, what I see is fairly strenuous timetable for making this happen. And that's all I need to do, Lynn, unless anyone has any questions regarding Town
Can we
Hill.
just include him on the email? I guess we could do that.
We'll send you a copy of the bill, too.
Well, as I indicated, sir, we're citizens and we help pay that bill anyway.
Thank you. That brings us down to old business. Have a social services adjustment. I don't have that.
You have before you a request from Department of Social Service from Ms. Ison that details a $562,480 adjustment to our budget. All that money is federal and state funds, no local dollars. It almost meets our threshold of having a public hearing, but I think we're just a hair below that.
So it's not necessary to have a public hearing for this adjustment.
No, sir.
All right, so I guess all we need is a motion and approval to do this.
I would like to say that Teresa had planned on being here tonight, but she's in Richmond at lobby at Legislative Days. actually trying to get some more funds for social services. So that's why she's not here. And she was apologetic for not being here at the last meeting and to explain what these funds were for, and they all are for foster care and adoption services.
All right, do I have a motion to approve the adjustment in the budget?
I'll move that we adjust the budget in the amount, in the, I don't have it right in front of me, that large number that was there.
562,480.
Thank you.
All right, I have a motion. Do I have a second?
I second.
Motion
Speak
and a
up down there
second.
on the end.
I second.
All right, any discussion? Start with you, Tracy.
Yes.
Dr. Littrell?
Yes.
Robbie?
Yes.
Philip?
Yes.
I say yes. All right, down to- we have we only have one person fill out for the recreation jobs for the board. Do I have a motion for that one?
I make a motion that we accept Adam Joyce's application for the Recreation Commission.
Have a motion, do I have a second?
I second it.
Motion and a second, any discussion? Start with you, Tracy.
Yes.
Dr. Littrell?
Yes.
Robbie?
Yes.
Philip?
Yes.
And I say yes.
Yes,
Mr. Moore needs to do the PSA deal.
Yes.
I make a motion, we accept Tracy Moore as the PSA representative for Jeanette Dalton.
We have a motion, do we have a second?
I second.
Motion and a second, any discussion? Start with you, Philip.
Yes.
Tracy?
I abstain.
Dr. Littrell?
Yes.
Robbie?
Yes.
I say yes. And I'll make a motion, we just move the rest of them until next month. And advertise for those, we have several positions in the recreation board. If folks wish to serve on that, there's an application process. You can go on the county website and apply. All right, that brings us down to the genealogy club lease.
Mr. Chairman?
Yes.
Just to remind the board that the public hearing's already been held, so you don't need any additional public comment or hearing. It's just a matter that is before you for approval or modification.
Okay. I will entertain a motion to approve the lease.
It would follow the the example you have on Exhibit A, right, Mr. Durbin?
Yes, the one thing I wanted to clarify is whether there's, the lease applies to both floors, or whether it was just for the one floor.
It's for it's for the lower floor and the portion of, and the storage room off to the left.
Okay, that was the thing I had questions about, but that's the way your exhibit reads.
Is that correct, Mr. Hurst?
First I've heard, yes.
The other one was for the other folks that's doing the scanning and that sort of thing, correct?
Is that the one that's the vacant?
Yes.
Yes.
Okay.
I make a motion, we accept the lease as presented.
I second it.
Have a motion and a second. This is a one-year lease.
With
Or-
additional renewal provisions.
Yep.
without any, so it rolls over consecutively unless there's something that comes up.
That's correct.
So the board doesn't have to take any action on it unless they want to make a change.
That's correct. The way the lease is drafted, it does provide for the board to make a choice whether to apply rent to the initial term or not. That's something that you might want to include in those.
I'll amend my motion that no monetary for the initial term. Make a further decision later.
All right, have a motion, do I have a second with that modification?
Question,
Yes?
is this consistent with the other leases on the building?
I would assume all of the new leases are being changed or modified to,
This was the form, this is going to be the first one of the new leases. But the intention that the understanding I have from the board was that this is to serve as the model for the future leases for other parts of the building.
we're not charging anything, you just put it in there if it deems necessary, but this lease will continue on unless there's a change or somebody brings it to the board to make a change, correct?
That's correct.
All right. So that's the, so I have a motion, did I get the second?
A second.
All right, I had a motion and a second. Any more discussion? Start with you, Philip.
Yes.
Tracy?
Yes.
Dr. Littrell?
Yes.
Robbie?
Yes.
I say yes. That brings us down to proposed budget reductions.
Are you looking my way, Mr. Chairman?
Yeah, I'm trying to find it here, and it's not on my, but I've got it somewhere. Yeah, there we go. Do you wish to discuss this, Mr. Dalton?
I will try. I met with the Finance Committee last week and discussed budget reductions, existing revenue, and other items. Two items in the budget reduction cause harm to the county. The regional jail now is projected to cost you an extra $400,000 in this fiscal year above what was budgeted. The current budget is $2.3 million. It's projected now that based off the monthly cost, it's going to cost Carroll County Board of Supervisors $2.7.5 million by the end of this fiscal year, June 30th. Under the Comprehensive Service Act, which is currently budgeted at $3,005,395. Under the current, if you project out the current expenditures, that budget will increase by $300,000 additional dollars up to $3,305,395. If I'll go through some of these numbers that we went through, proposed budget reductions. The Board of Supervisors budget $35,000. County Administrator's budget $80,000. Finance Director $15,000. Tourism $9,000. Information Technology $30,000. Commissioner Treasurer $15,000. District Court $8,000. Clerk of the Circuit Court $7,000. Commonwealth Attorney $5,000. Sheriff's budget $40,000. Fire Department's $20,000. Rescue $5,000. Juvenile detention based off their current projections, be less $30,000 reduction. Field inspection $5,000. Animal control $5,000. Emergency service is $50,000. Courthouse complex, $30,000. Cannery, $8,000, which would need delay of opening until July the 1st of next year. Maintenance forces, $20,000. County property maintenance, $10,000. Social service is $50,000. Carroll County Public Schools, $500,000. Farmers Market, $35,000. Subsidy to the IDA and Carroll County PSA, $700,000, for a total of $1.3 million. I would ask that we advertise it, hold the public hearing. I think the advertisement's already prepared and ready to go out.
I have a motion to have the public hearing.
Make a motion that we conduct a public hearing for our budget reduction.
Have a motion to have a second.
I second it.
Motion and a second. Any discussion? Just want to tell you, just the increase in the jail and the CSA cost more than that pool we had. That's just the increase that we have no control over. It's almost $750,000 that we have no control over. Any other discussion?
What date would that be?
That will be, is it February 10th or is that correct? February 10th? Monday, February 10th. Any other discussion?
I would add one thing for everybody's knowledge. Carroll County Public Schools, because of decreasing daily membership, is facing over a $300,000 cut in the state of Virginia already.
And they're not filling positions at this point in time. Any vacancies they have, they're keeping them open, just like we are. So we're not in good situation. All right, have a motion. I call for the question. Start with you, Tracy.
Yes.
Dr. Littrell? Yes. Robbie?
Yes.
Phil?
Yes.
I say yes. Sorry you have to come on these conditions, Tracy.
We're all good.
I think you was pre-warned, were you not?
Yeah.
All right, let's see. Really no laughing matter. All right. Do we need to go, we got closed session for personnel and legal? Is that correct? Do I have a motion to go into closed session?
Make a motion that pursuant to Virginia Code Section 2.2-3711, that we enter closed session for discussion with A1, which is personnel, and A8, legal, consultation with legal counsel.
And to just further specify, the legal consultation will be interpretation of agreements that the county is party to.
I accept that change. Do I have a second?
I second it.
Motion and a second. Start with you, Tracy.
Yes.
Dr. Littrell?
Yes.
Robbie?
Yes.
Philip?
Yes.
I say yes. Thank everyone for coming. Do I have a motion to come back into a closed session?
Make a motion, we return to open session from closed session.
Motion, do I have a second?
A second.
Any discussion? Start with you, Tracy.
Yes.
Dr. Littrell?
Yes.
Robbie?
Yes.
Philip?
Yes.
I say yes. Do we have a motion to certify that we only talked about the things that we discussed, that we said we would?
Whereas the Carroll County Board of Supervisors convened a closed session this date pursuant to the affirmative recorded vote and on the motion to close the meeting in accordance with the Virginia Freedom of Information Act. Whereas Section 2.2-3711D of the Code of Virginia requires a certification by the Board of Supervisors that such closed session was conducted in conformity with Virginia law. Now therefore be it resolved that the Carroll County Board of Supervisors hereby certifies that to the best of each member's knowledge, only public business matters lawfully exempted from open meeting requirements under the Virginia Freedom of Information Act were heard, discussed, or considered in the closed session to which this certification applies, and only such business matters as were identified in the motion by which this closed session was convened were heard, discussed, or considered in the meeting to which this certification applies.
Do we have a motion to so certify? I guess that's what we did. That's what your motion was.
Mine was
Do I have a
motion in
second?
I second it.
All right, motion and a second. All right, let's start with you.
Certify.
Tracy,
Yes.
Dr. Littrell,
Also certified.
Robbie.
I so certify.
I so certify. Do I have a motion for adjournment?
No. Mr. Saleo needs a motion.
Thank you.
Mr. Chairman, I'd like to make a motion to allow staff to advertise for a full and part-time position in Recreation Department and a full-time position in maintenance.
All right, I have a motion. Do I have a second?
I second it.
Motion and a second. Any discussion? Start with you, Tracy.
Yes.
Dr. Littrell,
Yes.
Robbie,
Yes.
Philip,
Yes.
and I say yes. Now I'll take that motion for
I have an
adjournment.
announcement.
Yes.
I will not be present at the next meeting in February, so I'll just let everybody know.
All right.
He done got word that the school system's gonna be here, Saleo.
Well, I can't say that I'm sorry, but that's not the reason I won't be here.
Question, so currently, I have not, no one is going to the VACO meeting,
I'll be out of town for that also, so
so,
I'll be out of town for that also.
so I'm gonna cancel the rooms. And, okay,
If I work it out to where I can go, I won't need a room, so that's okay.
I'm still gonna cancel the rooms.
All right. Is that it? Did we do I have a motion for adjournment.
So moved.
I second. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Adjourn. 9:36.
Tracy,
Yes.
down at the chief store. How many BTUs am I getting out of that thing?